Welcome to First State Kopites, a podcast for Delaware's Liverpool supporters and their friends.
Let's go. Hey, it's January 18th, and it's episode 19 of our fourth season here at First State Kopites. Welcome, dear listener. I'm Paul. I'm joined today by Justin from New York and Daz, who is in Baltimore. So the Reds suffered a really disappointing loss to Brighton last weekend, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But last night, they recorded a really nice win, FA Cup third round replay at Wolves to progress. And as a reward, they're going back to play Brighton at the Amex one more time. I should say, I was talking to someone today who's a Wrexham fan who asked what last night's game was about. And I had this disturbing realization that Wrexham of the National League were already in the fourth round. And we just about scraped in there yesterday. Anyway, so welcome. Let's start with Brighton, shall we? We might not want to talk about this for too long because this felt really, really hard to even contemplate for like hours and maybe days afterwards. So I'll start with you, Justin. Was there anything good that you could take away from that game? And maybe if not, because that's a possibility, what the hell do you think was going on?
I think to make a peon to your earlier mention of Wrexham, Liverpool lied down like Deadpool. They were bad. They're really bad. That was, I think, the worst match I've watched under Klopp. It felt not like people like saying it felt like the 6-1 at Stoke. It didn't feel like that to me. It felt something very different. Watching Brighton play us is what other teams looked like playing us for 5 years. And I hate being on the other end of that. Being on the other end of that sucks. I don't want to do that very often. It's a terrible feeling. What went wrong? Everything. What went right? Nothing. We didn't look like we could even factor into a position to get a shot on target. Like pick anybody. They had a bad performance.
Yeah.
Like the best performance is in the team where the guys up front because they couldn't actually get involved in the game. That tells you a lot.
Yeah. Well, so even to the point where it was an embarrassment how long it took to bring the 4 subs on, right? That was very telling.
Literally everybody had a bad. You actually know what? I will compliment one player involved in the match, Ben Doak. Ben Doak actually played like he was playing for something.
Yeah.
And tried, actually pressed a bit, tried to at least move with the ball, but it's just like we just didn't look like we had anything to us. We didn't know how to stop them. We didn't know how to create against them. It almost felt like the United game on steroids.
Yeah. Although there was something really weird about the formation. I'll go to you in a moment, Dad. There was just finally there was something really weird about the formation now. Like the amount of space that Solly March. I don't know why you can't say March, but everyone seems to call him Solly March. It's like, I don't know, one of those branding things, I'm sure. Had on the right wing was just ridiculous. And it felt conscious. It felt like Robertson, his job was not to go out to the touchline.
I think part of the reason we were so bad is because whatever tactical change we tried to do, the players were both physically incapable of and mentally incapable of. Because like playing Thiago higher, it doesn't make sense to me. Because if you play Henderson and Fabinho, you have two guys at the base of your midfield who, first off, can't move, and secondly, can't progress the ball. So, like, how do you expect to play football? If you use Thiago deeper, he'll buy more space and he'll at least he'll at least give Salah an opportunity to potentially run in behind, because there's actually no pace in there behind as well. But there's just it was just very illogical, and both of their wingers were allowed to find the ball in acres of space. Did you see anybody get close to Matoma for the entirety of his time on the pitch? He was able to run at whoever he wanted, whenever he wanted.
Did the same thing against us in the first game at Anfield too when he came on.
What I will say is he's done that against other people, not just against those.
He's very good.
Yeah. Whereas Solly Marsh, I saw somebody saying that I think it was the Southampton game. The Southampton were making him look like Luis Figo, and I think we were doing our best to make him look like that too, given the because he had way more space, I think, than Matoma.
Well, that just a tangent there. Like, there's the only other person that I can think of in the league. I'm not even sure if they're still in the league. Was that gets the full name is Carl Darlow.
Right.
Probably because he sounds like a bad guy in from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, the best part about that game was it was only 90 minutes long, so the pain eventually ended.
Yeah.
So I think Klopp said it was the worst he'd ever seen one of his teams play, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't honestly feel that I'm not that upset about it, because I believe on this pod this time last week, or whatever time it was last week, I said that we were probably going to lose 3-1 to them.
Yeah. Well, we dismissed that because we knew better, right?
Well, I was very frustrated. My biggest frustration of all of this is the same team that came to Anfield and put three past us, and we didn't seem to learn from that. I know that a lot of water's gone under the bridge. Players are mentally fatigued. They're physically fatigued. They just don't. Okay, I am not going to put Klopp in anywhere near the same zip code as Brendan Rodgers. But one thing that it did, like the way the formation set up and the way that we were so tactically ill-disciplined, was that whether it was ill-discipline or was just throwing something at the wall to see what stuck at that point, was a lot like Brendan Rodgers pacing around in Steven Gerrard's kitchen, looking for answers to the end of his tenure, what he was going to do to try and fix things. And that's kind of how it came across. It was just this higgledy-piggledy, the kind of mishmash ideas of what we were going to do to try and stop Brighton. Brighton are an 11 that plays like 12. And I said this last week, is like, I've watched them for a couple of years now, and I think we said it today in our thread, is like the beauty and the attractiveness of their football is the fact that it's so simple. They hunt well in packs. They move the ball very quickly between the lines. They're very, very clever on the movement off the ball, and they just utilize what they have very effectively. The difference this year and toward the end of last year was they started finishing their chances, which they couldn't do the season before.
Yeah. So I think one of the changes they've made, and I'd be interested in your perspective on this, Justin, is they've added, that's 7 midfielders in that team, effectively.
It's like Pep.
Yeah.
It's a Pep move.
And it feels like if we'd have had different tactics, that 7 midfielders might have been a problem. We might have been able to overcome that. But the problem was we gave 2, if not more, of their midfielders like oceans of space to work in.
Yeah, well, 2 of those guys are Moises Caicedo and Alexis McAllister, who are both fantastic footballers who are going to be playing in high-end Champions League clubs within the course of the next year. I don't see either of those guys at that club beyond next year.
Yeah,
they are going to cash in on them, and they'll probably recruit really good players in their place, because that's a really well-run club. And I envy their stability at the moment.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it? All the people that left and went to Chelsea, and they still feel like incredibly stable. Yeah.
I mean, they found a funding source, because Todd Bowley will buy anything.
He will, apparently. We'll talk about that later, maybe.
He bought this podcast while you've been on it.
Wow, we're getting way more for it than we ever would from anywhere else, right? Yeah.
I'm sure we'll probably get sanctioned by the FA.
Yeah. So let's talk about Todd Bowley later. Just kind of final round on the Brighton game, and then we'll get into the Wolves game, because that feels more appetizing to talk about. I don't want to talk about what if you. I know it's not one thing, but it occurred to me more and more after this game. And I'll start with you, Daz. That I don't know how I would feel about getting 90 points in 3 of the last 4 seasons, about being in 3 Champions League finals in the last 4 or 5 years, and not only ending up with 1 Champions League, 1 league, 1 point away from winning it twice. It being really hard to go again, no matter how my legs were, or no matter how, whatever formation we were trying. I may not, just psychologically hard to kind of go forward from here. And I was dismissing that as a thought for months. but now I'm very much in the mindset of got to be really hard because it's so unfair. They should have definitely have had more trophies based on everything they've done.
Well, we said that I think that we kind of allayed that particular fear or concern because we won the 4 right before the international break.
Yeah.
And we're bouncing into that 6-week break thinking Klopp's going to figure it out. We're going to move forward from here. This is going to be the springboard. And then it's kind of sputtered. We looked good against Villa for most of the game. Leicester was, it had its moments. Then Brentford, and then this, and then the Wolves in between that. It just casts everything in a much starker light. Because we've said many times, if Darwin Núñez finishes even 30% of those big chances that he missed,
yeah,
this is a completely different conversation. We'll say, yeah, it was a bit of a spawny win, but guess what? We're in touching distance of 4th or 3rd, or we're right in the hunt. But it's just bound to for us to get more introspective, and it is like, so apparently what Mourinho used to do was he would change his tactics. If he couldn't change his personality, he'd change his formation, he'd change his tactics just to freshen it up for the people that were still there, to try and give them something else to focus on. And Klopp's just asked these guys to go again and again and again, and eventually, like, they're not automatons, they're not machines, although you might think so for the last 3 seasons. And eventually it's like the lubricant will wear out and something's gonna give, and you're seeing it. And the fact that these guys was how they responded most recently on social media, and you shouldn't take a lot from social media because like a lot of it can be really disingenuous, but you get the sense that these guys were the real nadir. Like, it's like, we can't allow this to happen again. Yeah. We're better than this. We are custodians of Liverpool Football Club's football as it stands right now. More is expected of us. We are nowhere way more capable of this. And I thought it was very interesting that Klopp decided, like, okay, kids, you guys take a seat. Mm-hmm. I'll play these guys. And he got a response from it. But it's got to be difficult for these guys. And you have to give them a little bit of leeway. But, you know, your top reds, they won't. This guy's shite. He sucks. Get rid of him. We need this.
Yeah.
And it's not a knee-jerk reaction per se, because I think a lot of us saw this coming towards the end of last year when the wheels were definitely start squeaking a lot more. We weren't purring as much as we were earlier that season or the season before, towards the end of last season, that previous season.
Yeah.
So they're humans, man, and it's so many false dawns. We'll see what happens. Like, this was, I think, the Wolves game. We'll get onto this. I know this, but it's worth prompting this. It's like I think it was one of our lowest XGs.
Yeah.
In this season.
Yeah.
I think it might have been the lowest XG.
Yeah. Yeah. Based on XG, we should have had a goal of Brighton.
It's got a fun one though, because the post shot XG against Wolves was 0.46 in a game where we registered 0.16 XG. That is, it's remarkable to generate that much more post shot XG than XG.
And is that solely based on the Elliott goal?
That is no. It is actually based on Curtis Jones.
Oh, okay, all right. Oh, let's
see the smoke coming out of my ears.
Let's definitely talk about that. But let's just wrap up the Brighton thing. Final thoughts on this, Justin. I mean, I think for me, part of it has got to be like Arsenal are not that great. And those bastards are having it easy this season, given that, like, the stuff we went through in those 2 seasons where we didn't win the league by a point.
It's not just us; it's City. They're falling apart too.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's first off, both teams are having struggling playing directly through a number 9 who's not defensively engaged at all times. Haaland doesn't do much in build-up play.
Doesn't do shit.
Darwin does a little bit more in build-up play. But also at the same time, Darwin is not a particularly defensively engaged center forward.
I've seen him make more tackles than Haaland.
I mean that bar is so low that it's like a tripcord on the ground.
All right, good point.
But I think you have to change up the makeup of the team every so often, and if you have too many guys who went through all the same things that you were pointing out mentally, Paul, you do wonder. is there too many people who have been through the wars too many times? If not, like, you always need some guy, you always need a few people to keep the culture of what you had going. If you really like what you have, like, you need veteran leadership. You need, and you do, but you don't only need it. You sometimes actually just need young guys who will run through a wall and have the capacity to do so. Because nothing lasts forever. Jordan Henderson, for instance, has run more yards than literally anybody we've ever seen. He might have run 1 yard too many.
Yeah.
And you have to occasionally take a look at that and just realize that when you do that, but you have someone who's that vocal, but the performance level doesn't catch up to the vocal, the vocal nature of it. It can lose its effectiveness. Like, I don't think it's like creates trouble in the locker room, but people will just sit there and say, hey man, just do your job while you're on the pitch and I'll do mine, instead of you trying to point out every job to do on the pitch, because it's increasingly harder to do everything and point out everything when you're having trouble doing your requirements.
Although I was thinking about something Daz said last week, actually, about how Henderson looked great at the World Cup in those couple of games he played. Just you wonder whether he was like free of any like he didn't have to work. Yeah, it's like, England has never won anything, and they're not like to win anything anyway.
I think also Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham's legs help.
Yeah. But anyway, my point is, like, you come back here and you're like, how are these fuckers leading the league? Arsenal, that is, and we've been so magnificent for all these years, and we only ended up with 1 Premier League trophy. And damn it, we didn't get to even celebrate with anyone apart from, family and friends.
Football is a cruel whore.
Yes.
And she proved herself to be every single effing year.
Yeah. So I absolutely decided that was the end of part 1. We could talk a lot more. So we're going to talk about Wolves, but I feel like we should spend longer on the Wolves game, because if Brighton was a nadir, I think that was the word you used, Daz. Love the word nadir. How do we find our zenith? Welcome back to part 2. We are going to talk about a match that Liverpool won, and not only did they win, they had a clean sheet. I cannot remember. Do you remember the last time we had a clean sheet? I don't. It's really hard.
No, because we've been shitting the bed for the last 3 weeks.
Napoli at Anfield in the Champions League.
Oh wow, that's incredible. Given Napoli are probably currently the most informed team in Europe football. Yeah, wow, that's a really good start. So victory over Wolves. Where do we begin? We had 3 teenagers. Our signal group. There's some people in our signal group were a bit concerned about the absence of height in the team that they picked. The 3 teenagers, maybe the absence of pace up front, and Sean was concerned about another aging midfielder coming in to help us out, who turns out was perfectly fine. James Milner, that is. Thank you, Sean.
My hero, my mate.
Got the pictures to prove it.
Right. So, Jimmy Milner. But I'll go to you, Justin. Where do we start? The 3 teenagers. Bajcetic, I think it's
Stefan.
Stefan, yes. So my eyes were open to a new pronunciation. I think the guys on ESPN had it wrong because they were like doing Bajcetic, but I think it's Bajcetic. I think that's how you're supposed to say it now. It's not an A, it's a. Anyway, he was fucking good, wasn't he?
He was fantastic.
Brady.
He's relatively big. He needs to fill out, but I think he's 6'1". He is able to get around the pitch. Yep. He actually attempted tackles and won tackles, which is a novel concept for our midfield this season. Joined well in the midfield by Naby Keita, also snapping into tackles, and Thiago Alcantara also snapping into tackles. Kind of fun. But I thought Stefan was fantastic. I'm not going to tackle the last name. Everybody's now gotten in my head about it. But he was fantastic. I thought Harvey Elliott actually had a very good game, even though we offered very little in attack. I mean, he gave us a decisive moment, and that's a wonderfully taken goal. ran a lot. It's going to be hard on creative players like him, and Gakpo and Carvalho are all ball to foot players. So there's nobody who's running in behind it. None of those guys have the pace to really do that anyway. Like all three of them are guys you'd want playing withdrawn behind two guys with pace to be more of, starting the action rather than getting on the end of it. And that was difficult on them, and, wasn't particularly great. I thought Fabio Carvalho actually at least looked better on the ball when he played. He was pretty safe with it. He didn't get muscled off of it too much. And I enjoyed the way all three of the front three pressed. In particular, Gakpo was really defensively engaged. I don't think he won the ball a ton, but he at least provided an extra layer of defense to also just help the midfield out. And then the midfield, the press being there allows the midfielders to make plays proactively rather than reactively. And I think that was a big difference and of encouragement yesterday. The press and the forwards creating opportunities for the midfield to actually win the ball in transition was kind of nice. And then Thiago Alcantara still remains an absolute wizard. I feel like he is the one player who I actually kind of give a little bit of a pass given in our midfield, because he's the one who, is the most active of all of them throughout games. And we, I think we might hopefully have found something here. Like, hopefully this is players that we can introduce to the rotation in Kaida and Stefan, who will actually get playing time and play, because the two of them looked yesterday like they're better than most of our other midfielders.
Yeah. I'm sure there's an argument here about is the system or is the players, but great point. Not a lot of pace up front, but somehow we still managed to work the press in this game much better than we had in some of the previous games. And to the XG point, I do think there's some like pass before the pass thing going on. Like we had really good situations that we never seemed to quite tee up for great shots. That's a specific question. The Elliott goal, seems to come out of nowhere. Goalie came in for a lot of criticism. I know you have a different standard for goalies. What was your thoughts about that?
It went from for fuck's sake to I thought he was going to welly that over the bar. And
so someone in our pub yelled, "Pass it to Keita!" And then he scored.
Well, I know we often reference the guys at the Anfield rep, and I think that they were along the same lines. Is like Klopp generally doesn't endorse those types of 25+ yard shots or 20 outside of 20 yards. Yeah. And apparently James Milner said, "Hit it, put your foot through it," and he did, and it went in. Jose saw on closer inspection, I don't know what the hell he was doing. I have no idea what the hell he was doing. He was in no man's land, and then he was. He probably hedged his bets, but he looked like he almost stumbled backwards. Mm-hmm. Like I'd give probably 9 out of 10 goalkeepers making that save, and I think it got in his head because do you see the one he just kicked out for a corner?
Yeah.
I think it was in his head after that. He can make some great saves, but he's a very inconsistent goalkeeper, and long may it continue. But just on Justin's point, I think that the Wolves game was the perfect foil for us in terms of what's been going on in recent weeks. I don't think that anyone really gave a monkeys about whether or not we really performed in that, and it gave Klopp the ability to say, like, look, I'm just going to change it up. I'm going to take all of these guys out of the firing line. It's clear that they are just mentally knackered, because look at Thiago Alcantara yesterday. He looked like he was enjoying himself, and it's the first time I've seen look like he was enjoying himself for ages. I just wanted to share that someone on Twitter said Thiago Alcantara could find space in a single bed with Gemma Collins. I thought that was hilarious. Because he is, like, he's masterful.
He is.
And I think that Klopp had probably told these guys, like, look, win, lose, or draw, 100 shots on goal, 0 shots on goal. All I want from you guys is to get compact, to get closer to each other, and to press your absolute bollocks off. The way that Stefan, Stefan, was pressing.
Budgetich.
You by Budgetits. He was absolutely incredible. Like he could almost sniff out when someone was going to get like that 4 or 5 inches or more away from their foot. And if you look at a lot of the midfielders, they were probably within 4 or 5 yards of one another in that press. And it made it that frenetic that they couldn't get out, and they panicked. And we looked more like ourselves than we have in quite some time. And I think that was the focus. Klopp said, like, win, lose, or draw, this is what I want us to do. Get back to the basics that made us what we were. Yeah. And I think he drilled that into everyone, because when the subs came on, we looked demonstrably like worse. I don't think that Curtis Jones was doing the same amount of work closing down that Carvalho was doing. That like those guys ran themselves into the ground. To your point, Justin, like they weren't offering much going forward, but they would make damn sure that they were covering their man, they were closing down passing lanes, and they were hustling. And when they went off, it kind of fell off. Harvey went back into like that left-sided 8 role. And I think that he looked a bit at sea for a while. He was letting guys run past him. He wasn't picking up like we were before. And as a result, we were under duress. But I thought that Harvey, that's his bucket. That's the bucket that he carries water with. He's, to Justin's point, he's not quick enough to go around anyone, but he's masterful with the ball at his foot. He's very tough. Like it doesn't get like too far away from him. So it makes it difficult to get the ball from him. And if he shifts it quickly enough, he makes it look easy.
Yeah.
Like James Milner was kind of that same revelation. I think he was just told, like, look, just don't let anyone get by you. Just keep it simple, keep it solid.
Well, there was that moment at the end of the game where he actually made a tackle, which somebody meanly in my vicinity suggested might have been his first of the season. I think he's made more than one tackle, but he was so pumped up by the tackle he made and the importance of like shutting down Wolves' game. I felt like that was a moment, hopefully that he can take forward. I mean, so many people I want to talk about actually in this game. And we've talked. Some people on this podcast have been very critical of Keita, Milner, and Gomez. Some of them, the critical people may not be here, but I don't know. Gomez, let's start with that, Justin. I thought that was a really good performance from him.
He looked good.
Yeah, I'm no longer thinking, as some people have said, he should be shipped off somewhere and we should find a full centre back from somewhere else.
Okay, that's me. But one match is not changing my opinion on that. One match is not changing my opinion on that. But no, I'd like to see Joe Gomez play well. It's just been very difficult for him to do so lately. But you know what? I'd start him against Chelsea off of that performance because it's better than Matip's last few performances have been. And you hope that Gomez and Ibu can give you an approximation of how Virgil and Gomez played that position where, it's very obvious which one is going to stop the ball aerially and which one's going to sweep, so they know their roles. And, it puts Ibu then on Trent's side.
His favorite side, I think.
Which is his favorite side.
Yeah.
And you put him on Trent's side and he's going to be able to help Trent out defensively more. Like if you put a defensive, a right central midfielder who's also more defensively clued in, than either Elliott or Henderson. And again, it starts to look more solid. Like, there are solutions to some of these problems in the team. How good are those solutions going to be? I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that they're going to take us on a run to Istanbul, but you never know. But solve your problems, right? Solve the problem. If you're not going to go into the transfer market, you can't just sit there and say, well, I'm not going to try to solve the problems that I have in this team now by using the same personnel in the same situations that they've been unable to work through. Like, Klopp isn't wrong when he says that there's an obsession with transfers, and sometimes you need to actually work on, focus on the problems you can solve with coaching. And I think, some of the guys you mentioned, 2 of them there are part of the solution, it seems, at the moment. Yeah. Joe Gomez is going to insert pace into your back line. Naby Keita is going to be more robust. He's going to be more tenacious in your midfield. Like, those 2 should play more.
Yeah. Well,
the third one, when you mentioned, was James Milner and you know what? He was good yesterday. Did a good job. Didn't really get beaten too much. Didn't sell out for too much. He gave you a James Milner performance. Solid effort and gonna make it through 90 minutes.
Can I just call one thing out from James Milner? Like when who I can't remember who was it? Al Nure.
Yeah.
Yeah, was offside and Milner clattered in. It's like a free hit.
Yeah.
I said that to my son. I was like, this is what you need to watch. Yeah. This is the most professional foul that you're going to see. Like, he doesn't make it look too egregious.
Yeah.
But he will pull the man down and he'll make sure that it sticks.
Yeah. And not even called a foul because it was offside.
But even his fouls, like his professional fouls yesterday and his tactical fouling yesterday was sumptuous for those of us that may or not have engaged in some of the darker arts in our times playing football.
Well, this team, that was the interesting thing, I think, about one of the interesting things about this team. They actually committed, I think, more fouls than we have in a long time, right? And Wolves are very upset that we didn't get more yellow cards.
Well, I know that Andre Marin is like, it almost feels like I need to wash my mouth out saying his name out loud, but like I know we'll come to talk about him in a second, but he was fair.
Well, we can talk about him now. It was remarkable, actually, wasn't it? It was the first game I've watched. I mean, you said there were more games before, but this is the first game I've watched in a while where it's like, I could go with most of those calls.
Yeah,
they missed a few. They missed a few corners that Wall should have had.
Yes,
but
and I don't think that the card that he gave to what's his face, the Vaseline pirate, I don't think that was a yellow card. It was very, very soft.
Yeah,
but swings and roundabouts. The one thing that I guess it's tangential, but like that the handball that they gave against Mo on top of the box there, I just wish that they were more consistent. Is it a hand? Because if that's a handball, what happened in a game against Arsenal, it was almost identical.
Yeah. So I feel like we should feature that every week, like Miguel Arteta's scandalous refereeing. Like, really, you've not been on the good end of this? Anyway, anything else to say about the Wolves game? We'll go to part 3 and we'll talk about like the upcoming game against Chelsea and maybe some other random stuff about all the things that are wrong with Liverpool, according to Miguel Delaney. That's stuff that we might want to touch on.
I think we should talk about Naby though. Naby,
go ahead.
Naby was great.
Yeah,
I think it's I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on for a second here, but Klopp has to have something against him. I know if it's because he just doesn't trust him, if he's just an asshole in the dressing room, something's going on, because every time he's come on, he's made us look more of a compact unit. He's made us look demonstrably better when he's come on. And yesterday was the first start that he's gotten in quite a while, and the difference was telling. So it's if what's in the press is to be believed, which you can take or leave it, pinch of salt, pile of bullshit, whatever. They're saying that they're at an impasse and then he wants gone. So
yeah,
so I wonder if that's factoring into what Klopp is thinking. But you can't. If I cringe to, I hope he's not that petty. That he's like, look, we it's needs must at this point. We don't have very many hands on the pump, and he's one of the steadying hands on the pump. So why not play him? Like, it's like he does some crazy stuff every now and again that can get us into trouble, but the vast preponderance of what he does is beneficial to us playing football.
I think someone said to me yesterday, actually, saying I'd forgotten how good he was when he was on the ball, like with those short passes, like how he kind of stands people up. I think that was definitely an 8 out of 10 performance from him in my book.
Justin?
I liked him a lot. Sorry, I was looking at the agenda. No, I thought, like he makes us play better, and I believe also that the stats prove it. I think we've won like 78% of the games he starts, which is an extremely high ratio.
There's no one on the team that's played that we've won more games when they've been playing than him. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at it, hindsight's 2020. He's the one who's supposed to probably be in his prime age and being the first midfielder on the team sheet when he was signed at this point. And the fact that it hasn't happened and we don't know why is something that I think we're going to end up finding out once he leaves Liverpool, when someone has, the inside story of why Naby Keita didn't make it at Liverpool, even though, you know what, he kind of has, because he's been part of a team that's won literally everything. So
yeah,
I'd rather just, focus on the good things he did and hope that he gets a chance to do a few more of them.
I think it's really easy when he's not been in the team to point to the times when he hasn't been in the team, but often when he has, he's been like incredibly influential.
Yeah, he's a good footballer.
Still not forgiving him that diabolical shot in the Champions League final. That feels like
he took one yesterday that stopped before it got over the 18-yard line, and he hit it from 19 yards. It was awful.
That looked like me pitching a golf ball.
Yeah. So this is how Naby's career will be defined: like some highs and some lows. Okay, okay, we're gonna end part 2 here. So clearly, like, win number 1 in a sequence that we hope will last a while. Hey, welcome back to part 3 of First State Kopites. We have looked at the games that Liverpool played in the last week. In the upcoming week, we only have one game. It's an early kickoff on Saturday against the confusing team that is Chelsea Football Club. Chelsea did win last weekend. That's their first win in a while. I think was it 1-0?
Yes.
Yeah, they beat Palace?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Palace, who looked awful to me in most games I've seen them recently, but did do the decent thing and took points off United today, which we should always celebrate. Well done, Michael Elise. But so just quick tangent. I noticed the Mank on NBC's coverage was still talking up Manchester United about how they control the game. If that was us, we'd be talking about like, oh, how can you lose a game in the last minute? That's really weak. Anyway, Chelsea. Justin, I'll start with you. What team would you play this weekend, given everything we've said about who played well yesterday and who may not be in the best form? Formation obviously is a big part of this. How would you begin to set this thing up?
I would repeat the midfield we had, or if I need to not play Stefan because I don't trust him against Chelsea yet, I am playing Fabinho as the defensive midfielder and hoping that Thiago and Naby can bring out the best in him. I don't want to see Henderson near the starting lineup. Let him run his entire tank out in the last 30 minutes. And then I want to see a back four of Robertson, Konate, Gomez, and Trent. Obviously, I want to see Alisson in the net. And I think probably the front three, you have potentially 4 players for 3 spots, where if Darwin's healthy and enough to start, you're starting him. If Mo is obviously a no-brainer. And then the question is, where do you deploy all of them and who do you use? I would probably go with Gakpo with Darwin and Mo, and I'd probably play Gakpo a bit more withdrawn, kind of to help you solidify the center. And he's a player who wants ball to feet, and is probably more of a supplier and guy who might shoot from distance than an in the box player. Whereas Mo and Darwin are in the box players, so I would rather have them further forward where they can also play off of each other. So I think that's how I'd attack that. But I could also see Klopp going with Mo at center forward and Harvey on the right or left wing, depending upon Darwin's fitness. In which case, you'd imagine it'd be Gakpo, Elliott, Salah. But I think Elliott has to be played as a forward. I don't like dropping him into midfield. I think his off-ball work as a forward is good. His off-ball work as a midfielder is not quite good, and you'll get more out of him just playing him in a position that suits him.
Yeah, I do think at times in yesterday's game with Elliott, we played like a 4, 3.5, 2.5. I think that's the right way of looking at it. Elliott wasn't quite a forward at times, and there were definitely times where he was part of a 4 in the midfield. So definitely think that's an option. I
I
think.
believe South American football invented this role. It's called the number 10.
Well, except he's on the right hand side, so I don't know. Maybe I don't know what you call that.
8.75.
Not 9.5. It's like Harry Potter wizardry, kind of thing.
The messy role.
Yes, yes, yes. But okay, that seems yeah, I can do that. What about coming off the bench though? Because if you do end up with Gakpo, Nunez, and Salah, then our bench is still a bit thin without Jota and Diaz and Firmino.
No, we've got the Scottish Messi. We've got Ben Doak. We'll be all right.
Yeah. Well, I think if Chilwell and James are playing, then I think Doak could be in his element, right? Because I don't think they've got anyone else with pace.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're kind of boned it forward until Bobby and Jota return. Bobby was supposed to be back for Brentford and is still not back, so I guess where is he? But
he's the reason no one believes any Liverpool injury updates, right? It's like,
no, I mean,
just a minor injury, flesh wound.
I think he was genuinely probably supposed to be back for that game, but he's also 30, and this is when the age when injury recovery for athletes starts to fall off a cliff. So
yeah,
I don't think there's any attempt to obfuscate there. I just think that it is what it is. They thought he'd be healthy. He's not.
Yeah.
But I mean, it'll be telling to see what happens with the first forward sub off the bench. Is it going to be Oxlade-Chamberlain, which I kind of hope it's not, because I'm not a huge fan of him playing as a forward, or will actually Fabio Carvalho get to play more minutes as well too? Like, our Carvalho and Doak basically are depth. I mean, not really ideal, but I think it's preferable to Chamberlain. And there's the extent to which we actually need to play to find out what we have, and some of the guys who will actually be here next season. And I'd rather see the young guys at this point.
It's a really great call, actually, because it felt like for a month or so, then Carvalho wasn't getting near the team, and Oxlade-Chamberlain got played on that left side. I don't know which game it was, but one of these games, and maybe it was the Brighton game, was the final thing which said we're playing Carvalho, and Oxlade-Chamberlain is down the pecking order.
Yeah, and if you're going to use Ox, use him in midfield. Like, his skill set's going to play better there right now. Yeah. He's not going to stretch the pitch for you. So just use him to tackle a bunch of guys and do a bunch of, just a bunch of running at a faster pace than either Jordan Henderson or Fabinho at the moment.
So, where are you, Daz, on what the team should be on Saturday? It's hard to know what team Chelsea are going to play, actually, which is part of my, like, how do you set up to play against them? Are they going to play this Ukrainian guy whose name I can't pronounce?
Mudryk, is that right? Mudryk.
Sounds awful like Modric, which we never do well against.
I think that he's going to err on the side of experience. Chelsea, like as much of a wounded animal as they are, still have the potential to be a fantastic squad. So, I'm with Justin. I don't think he'll put Stefan B in the 6 role. Primarily, well, A, because of his age, and B, because I think I read somewhere that he was cramping pretty heavily on 70 minutes, and that's why they had to sub him. You have to remind ourselves, these are kids.
Just to be clear, I think Justin was saying we should play Stefan Bajcetic.
I would absolutely start him. He can run.
Yeah, I think he deserves it. He deserves a shot, and he played it. Look, Chelsea aren't Wolves, and Wolves aren't Chelsea, but
Wolves are probably more dangerous.
He's playing against full-blooded full professionals, and he was not out of place. I know people might say, "Oh, well, what about the City game?" I was like, "It's fucking Manchester City."
Yeah,
like Fabinho struggles in those games. So, but I think he'll go with experience. Like as inconsistent as Fabinho has been, when he's on, he's still tremendous.
Yeah,
and I don't think he'll play Henderson. I hope he doesn't. But then again, that there was a lot of minutes in Thiago's legs, so I'm wondering if he doesn't go with Henderson over Thiago, which would break my black little heart. because you need someone that can. Henderson, don't be wrong, he can play a great forward ball, but not with the same type of regularity that you're going to get from Thiago.
Yeah,
and we're going to need someone to help unlock. I know that Nobby can do it too, but I think that I think what he might do is start. If again, is there any word on whether or not Darwin is actually going to be
70% is what I heard today. 70% chance of him playing.
So then I don't think you'll start him, which probably means you'll see Ox with Gakpo in the middle and Mo down the side. I wouldn't mind
Carvalho instead of Oxlade-Chamberlain, given what he did.
Two games in a week. I don't think he will. Again, he's a youngster. I don't think he will. I think he'll err on the side of what he knows. Again, because Carvalho is very inconsistent. He played really well, but sometimes he can go missing in games. So I not that Ox doesn't, but I think Ox has got more credibility in the tank.
I thought Chamberlain was awful at Brighton, and that may not have been his fault. But
he wasn't alone. Like, you can't single him out in a crowd as being the worst. It was a whole crowd of worst. Klopp won't. He'll doggedly persist with his 4-3-3, but I wouldn't mind seeing like a 4-4-2 diamond, because and if of course Darwin's ready to play, because I think that Mo and Darwin next to each other are perfect counterpoints. Like they understand each other, and I think that as we saw it progress, as we saw them get closer and closer together, we saw more attacking potential. But I think we're going to be limited by what we have available. I think the back four like kind of speaks for itself. I don't think he'll play Matip. I think that Joey Gomez has done enough. And to go back to the point you made in segment 2 there, I think that there's been enough evidence of the inconsistency of Joe Gomez for people to be able to say, is like, he had a great game, however, then you go back to Napoli, however, you go back to Nottingham Forest. Like, there's numerous examples. It's like 1 in 3 is essentially. So you don't have to slaughter him, but you can have kind of misgivings or a slight hesitation and pause around choosing him to be your central defender.
Yeah.
But look, there's a long way of saying is I think that he's probably going to go with more experience and less youth in this.
Yeah. Well, so of the recent past, I think Matip's performance at Brighton, again, I think some of that's about what was being asked of him, wasn't great. It felt like he was like constant. He wasn't like, when Joel Matip plays at his best, it feels like there's a calmness going on. And that felt a bit too chaotic for him to be.
Running around, his hair was on fire.
Yeah. Well, playing out on the right, like playing, he's on the wing so many times, which doesn't feel right.
I mean, I have something I'd like us to try, but I know it won't happen.
Go ahead.
This isn't drugs, is it?
No.
Okay.
Hopefully it's team selection.
It is a team selection.
Which is a drug.
I would like to actually try to see us actually play Matip at right center back, Gomez and right back, and actually move Trent into the midfield.
That's been floated.
Yeah,
I really think that actually could be a solution to some things. It might be the kind of tweak this team could use, because look, I know that you don't really have then a ton of depth at right back and center back, and I know that it jeopardizes center back depth because you're playing 3 of them three of them, and if there's an injury, it means you're down to 2 center backs plus Nat Phillips, which is not ideal. But when you're really looking for a spark, sometimes you have to do some things that you find unconventional, and perhaps moving Trent into the midfield gives you another body there. And it might also be easier, if you're going to use the window, to just find a defensive right back who you can also use to just plop in behind Gomez as well.
Yeah. So a couple of things. I think one of the things that actually Phillips does well when we're incredibly compact and one of the issues early in the season, we played against Palace, is like we're playing that high line where there's like 2 defenders on the halfway line and they run away and score. I do think Phillips could play a role, but it needs to be within a much more confined formation, which would give
see ball, head ball.
Yeah. Yes. Neil Atkinson was advocating for Trent in midfield, and everyone shouted him down. And the shouting down was about Klopp's quite conservative in many ways, and he's not tried this. Trent may never have played in midfield since he was like 16. So I feel like they need a like an easy League Cup game or an easy FA Cup game to try it out, and I don't think we have one of those coming.
Sometimes the best trial is a trial by fire.
Yes. I'm trying to think of what failed experiments we've had in our recent history. Okay,
I got one. Mario Balotelli.
And Andy Carroll.
I was thinking more about someone that we valued playing in a different position that didn't work. Oh.
Yeah, Thiago Alcantara last Saturday.
Right. There we go.
Bobby Firmino, right wing, under Rodgers.
Yeah. So that's Chelsea. We'll play them 7:30 our time on Saturday.
Michael Oliver's the ref. Take that where you will.
Well, he's been shit the last few times he's refereed us. But generally, I prefer to have him than Atwell or Tierney.
Atkinson.
We don't have, unfortunately, do not have to have Atkinson anymore.
Let me ask a question to the two of you. Between now and Saturday morning, how many more players will Chelsea buy?
11. How far in debt are they? Are they in debt? Like I'm seeing like figures of like a close to £500 million
when the team was purchased, the ownership group also pledged $1.7 billion in investment into the squad, the academy, the women's team.
It feels like cheating.
I mean,
they've not spent it well. I mean, let's start with that.
You're allowed to invest a certain amount of money into a football club, like when you first buy it. That's part of the FFP rules. But when you say $1.7 billion of investment, you don't think that you're going to spend $1.7 billion in a year.
They could use a new stadium too.
Good.
Yes, that's part of the loan too, is infrastructure on Stamford Bridge.
Long may they stay in that stadium, because that's going to hold them back. That'll be absolutely awesome. So actually, there was so watching the game on Saturday. There was a family who'd been to London over the holidays, and for whatever reason, they'd gone to Stamford Bridge for a game. It was the Bournemouth game, and they said the atmosphere was so subdued. It was not what they were expecting.
So one of my friends actually went to the Chelsea game on Sunday, and I actually want to know what he has no frame of reference. Like the only other football match I've ever seen him at was a Liverpool Man City exhibition match at Yankee Stadium in 2013 or 20. Sorry,
Raheem Sterling.
Yes, Raheem. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So
saying happy birthday.
Yeah. So that's the last time that's the last time I saw him at a football match. So I want to know kind of what he feels about Stamford Bridge.
Well, my friend Chris, our friend Chris, said it was a bit dead. Anyway, because I was like, oh, I'm not sure I'd have gone to Stamford Bridge, but apparently he's like, oh yeah, it wasn't much going on. It's very quiet.
What's your prediction? Scores.
Oof. I don't do predictions, but I feel like we're going to beat them by a goal.
Prediction? Pain.
For Chelsea, hopefully.
Clever Lang side. You decide what it contains.
So you know what? If I feel like we score against them first, that will not help their mindset.
I have a feeling that Anfield's going to be up for it, even in an early kickoff.
Yeah,
I think there's going to be some venom. I think this is when I think that the Kop might have something to say about this this side at the moment. The traveling Kop yesterday was fantastic.
It really was.
Yeah. So I watched the first half back actually, and it was like there was so many instances of like, how many Liverpool fans are there? Because this is very loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At first, I thought those bastards are ripping our songs off, and I was like, "Oh, that's us."
Right. Well, I wasn't sure about the Bobby Firmino one, whether that was them or us, but then they weighed in with LA, and Fields of Anfield Road, and yes, Yes.
Wolves fans aren't allowed to take an LA version because Brexit means Brexit.
So apparently, I just complete detour here. I had not realized they were singing the "God Save the King" at Anfield. It's like someone was mocking the sense of like, oh, you want someone to reign over you? That seems a bit weird. Anyway, sorry, that's
not a group of people I understand.
British Scouse thing. Yeah, so I think we talked about this like on our feed, right? Wolverhampton, maybe the poorest city in England. Why would you be God Save the Kinging it? I don't know. Anyway, let's move on to one more thing. We talked about their expenditure. I did read a couple of tweets from Kieran Maguire, who I think is at the University of Liverpool and does football finance, and he says the 400 million they've spent on players is not as bad as you think it is because they can defray the costs. So I know that they said they're going to invest whatever it is, but some of this has to show up on the financial fair play, doesn't it?
I think it does, but I think there are also owners are allowed like a load up period.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to invest X amount, but whatever it is, they're gonna blow past whatever that is.
Yeah.
But that's why they're signing all these ridiculous contracts. They have to amortize some of these deals out for so long.
Yeah.
Like Todd Bowley, I know exactly what this is. Todd Bowley is basically taking like the kind of things that are done to navigate salary caps in American sports and applying them to FFP, and it is not going to work. You're signing players to 7 and 8.5 year contracts.
Yeah.
Like they're going to be impossible to transfer because no player, if they go bust at Chelsea but is making a really good pay packet, and I can't picture it with the amount of money they're spending on transfers that they're probably not paying these guys decent wages.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like those deals are going to be impossible to move on if they flop.
Do you think he'll? So what's that guy the Mets were paying for years and years? Think they'll be able to like transfer the Dodgers like terrible contracts to Chelsea to keep paying them for?
It's Bobby Bonilla, and he is given $1.35 million on July 1st of every year between. I think he signed that buyout in 1999.
Oh my God!
And he's received $1.35 million every single year and will till 2035.
Wow. So, do you think Cucurella is still going to be getting like $1 million from Chelsea in like 2035? Sorry.
Happy Mark Cucurella Day.
We should. The price they pay for him is fucking ridiculous. But anyway, just a couple more things. Mikel Delaney, who apparently he's now a man in the know about what happens at Anfield, critiqued Linda's book, basically saying that people in the club were not happy about it. He also critiqued the fact that they'd signed Darwin Nunez because they'd let go their best player, Sadio Mane. Numerically, the statistically, that does not add up. But what are your thoughts? Daz, I'll start with you.
To be honest, I care less and less about this type of stuff. I know that I share it with you guys, but it's usually just to get a reaction out of Sean. And then
that's great.
And when Sean reacts, Justin jumps in, and then it's just time for the popcorn.
And then I have to turn my feed off for an hour.
The next 2 hours of my day are spoken for.
It's great.
I honestly, Miguel Delaney, and I think we talked about this off air, Justin. He's good at what he does when he knows what he's talking about, which I guess is like 90% of the population. But this is probably just like his independent editor saying like, look, we need clicks, throw some shit against the wall, try and get to rile up some hate, get the top reds going, see if we can get some engagement that way. He generally tends to be, he's an agitator, he's an agent provocateur. Like he likes to shake things up. He doesn't mind getting into argy-bargy with people online. It's just more of the same. Like the Pep Linders book did come out of nowhere. So like that seems like that there's some credibility to that. I'm like this. And now since then, he seems to be very, very vocal about what his future is going to look like or what the club is doing. I think that he's probably earned that right. Whether or not people are pissed off about it, I don't give a flying fuck at a rolling donut, to be quite honest.
Uh-huh.
And I know that's not necessarily content, but it's the Darwin stuff as well. It's like, I think that it's such a knee-jerk reaction. Like, we lost Sadio Mane. Like, I love Sadio Mane just as a human being first, and then as a footballer second. So for me, it personally was a big loss. But I'm not holding them up as a like-for-like transfer. They're two different players.
Yeah.
And I think that the problem is, and like you see a lot of people do this, is like, who was better in their prime, that type of shit. And oftentimes that they're talking about two players that play completely different styles of football. So it's false equivalency, and it's just it's trying to pick a fight for the sake of picking a fight. So Miguel Delaney, if you listen to this, God bless you, shut the hell up.
Right. So the thing I really didn't like was that he claimed that people at Anfield didn't think that Nunez's ceiling was the high. Like, what? So but Justin, I'd really like to get your take on the rumors that were really heavy this weekend about like Qatari businessmen are going to buy Liverpool. James Pearce was out today, saying that the most likely thing is going to be some partial investment. I don't know where you want to start with some of the fools that have been vindicating why it would be a good idea to have Qatari investment, but your thoughts on what would be a reasonable person's view of all of that nonsense.
Well, your first mistake is taking me as a reasonable person.
Yep.
No, I mean, look, if Liverpool is to be sold, the first place you're going to hear from it is not from a bunch of random Twitter accounts, because these kinds of deals are complex and require a lot of diligence and usually have non-disclosure agreements and a lot of other things that kind of tell you that the sale of a multi-billion-dollar asset isn't going to be conducted over social media. And if you think it is,
just let me interject. That sounds very interesting, very reasonable. Just saying.
I know. And if you think it is, you're making a huge mistake. That's just not how these things happen. For some reason, everybody becomes an expert in everything when it's really, really, a hot topic. Like, about 2.5 years ago, or a little over 2.5 years, almost 3 years ago, everybody was becoming a crack epidemiologist, right?
Right.
And then, everybody now is in Liverpool Twitter is an expert in investment banking and
mergers and acquisitions,
geopolitical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, everybody's going to have their, like, when it comes to the concept of Qatari owners, right? If it's a Qatari state, because I want to make a very important distinction, which is if it's a private individual, regardless of where they come from, they deserve to be judged on the merit of their character and the values that they the values they bring to the club. If it's state ownership and you know what that state's about, there are certain things that you're saying I'm okay with.
Yeah.
In supporting a venture that they're doing, like, and it's going to be really hard for me because I can't really just kind of quit this club. It's kind of a part of my routine watching of everything, and one of the things I love most. But it will feel some parts about it will feel very, very hollow to me, and I'll know that with every single time we bring in a big money transfer, how that sausage was made, and there's parts of that I'm just going to find repulsive. And how would I react to it if it occurred? I don't know. It hasn't happened yet. So don't ask me, because I don't have anything that I need to actually do. But I think that what I would like, though, is, and I know this is a tall ask, if people are really for it, right, you don't have to go through all the mental gymnastics about, what about this? What about this? It's more intellectually honest to just admit that, this doesn't cross my line. You don't have to try to pretend it's something it's not.
So I have some breaking news that you may not be aware of that we might want to just kind of chat on. Headline from Sky Sports: Liverpool jump above Man United as Man City stay top of Deloitte Football Money League. So Liverpool are now third behind City, who clearly have no dodgy connections. Clearly, just
while we've been on this podcast, I've a company that I just thought of in my head has been signed as the official teleportation partner of Manchester City Football Club.
Yeah. The money's entirely legit. Let's not question. Real Madrid is second, and we're third in this newly published list. Yeah.
I mean, this is the part that this is the part that annoys me, right? You see things like this. We're making third in, we're third in the delay money list. Now, obviously, if we miss the Champions League next year, that will diminish. But the brand and the club are still strong in a good financial position. If you actually just get your stuff right off the pitch, you don't need a sugar daddy owner because there's more than enough money there. You're an extremely rich football club.
Yep.
Where's the money, Henry? Where's the money?
I mean,
we don't need the money. We have Stefan.
we're going to need some money in the very near term future because regardless of what you think, regardless of what anybody thinks about certain players, we have already under contract. You have James Milner, Naby Keita, and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, and Bobby Firmino all have contract in the summer. And if we're being honest, we probably should be moving past all of them, and you're going to need to replace them in the squad.
Yeah.
Fabinho's on a contract for another 3 years.
29.
He signed through 2026.
Yeah.
I mean, there's going to be an uncomfortable conversation around whether or not we should sell him this summer.
Yep. Yeah. There's lots of questions to be raised, actually. One final thing. Now I've broken the news, which obviously won't be broken because it'll be everywhere, that we're third in that Deloitte's list, which is bizarre. That this is the point we end up being past, United and all those other teams. Katie Gordon, I think you saw the article today. You might have wondered what happened to him. He started the semi-final second leg against Arsenal last year in the League Cup.
Yeah.
Looked like quite a player, but anyway, he's been injured. Apparently, it's to do with growing pains, but he's going to be back very soon. Not quite sure what that means for Ben Doak, but he looked quite a player. So maybe the way to go is thoughts about Katie Gordon, thoughts about like how we can integrate all those other players, including Stefan, who's clearly our hero now. Bajcetic, right? That's
Bajcetic. I mean, all of these guys, it's exciting to have young prospects. And the reality is, like, if one or two of the like 5 or 6 guys that we're talking about make it and have good careers in the first team at Liverpool, and the other 4, you're able to move to places where they can go play a good career, and we get some money out of it. That's how your academy should work. And like, I'm perfectly in favor of operating that way. Just needs to be part of the strategy and not just the strategy.
I think my point was Gordon felt like one of those people like Harvey Elliott. Yeah. Like there was a generational kind of talent that would find a place, should be able to find a place in our first team.
I mean, he's big, right? So like it's a good starting point. I think he's about 6'1" as well, and he's pretty fast. Like and
he's left-footed.
Yeah, he could be a long-term success. Like it's a shame that he's missing this year of development because he would be a good long-term foil for Mo Salah to play just some of those minutes in things like the League Cup and the FA Cup.
Yeah, I felt like that was a good place to end in terms of kind of optimism about some of our future players. Clearly, it's weird, right? That Bajcetic has come through this year. And there've been a whole lot of players we talked about, and he may now be in like position A to actually be a kind of like a regular first team player. And some of the others be great if they made it, but like Morton, for example, I think he's doing pretty well at Blackburn.
We just extended his contract.
Well, is that to do with our belief in him, or to do with the Edwards model of that makes it easier to get a good return?
It could be a little bit of both. I mean, in reality, given where our midfield numbers are, like there's every bit of a possibility that he could be our 7th or 8th midfielder next year.
Yeah.
right? You know, a depth guy who gets some minutes. Like, I don't want to write a player, and like I know I'm not accusing any of you of doing this, Paul. I don't want to write a player off before he's had an opportunity to actually do what he's before we see what he's good at. Like Tyler Morton's a young kid who's been running a good championship team's midfield.
Yeah. And you know, it's complicated, right? Because so few people make it. You know, I was watching a brief bit of the Leeds Cardiff game today, and Cardiff's number 10 is Shea Ojo, who, you know, for a while we had really high hopes of, and you know, great that he's got a, you know, I'm assuming given he's got the number 10 shirt at the team, he is someone who's like well embedded in their team. He's got a good career in the Championship, and I think what you know, which may be true of people in our academy, and that's a good career for them. What I'm kind of really looking for is, you know, are the Katie Gordons, the Harvey Elliots that are out there, are they going to form the basis of our team over the next like 5 to 10 years? We don't know, right? But
our organization is littered with players that we've heaped potentially unrealistic expectations on. The next this, the next that.
Yeah.
Jordan Iver's another one.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can shake a stick at some of these guys, and I'm wondering if the fact that you're wearing that liver bird on your chest has something to do with how not a precipitous, I don't know the right way of saying it, but just how quickly they seem to disappear, or they're never heard from again. I'm like, I know it's a cutthroat sport and it's a results business, but I'm wondering if the fact that it is Liverpool Football Club doesn't weigh somewhat more heavily on those kids, because if it's, say for example, it's at Southampton, they have the capacity to get the minutes and be like, oh, this kid's kind of good. Like look at Ait Nouri. I think he'd be a fantastic addition to our squad. I think that he was every bit of a Klopp player. And I watched him play us the first time. I think he played against I was like, who is this kid? He's young. He's not scared. He's quick. But those avenues of advancement are somewhat narrower for kids at Liverpool, and then they show 20 minutes of excellence, and all of a sudden the next big thing, and then they then they're a flop because the expectations are so high. It's
yeah. Well, I think what's got harder for them as well is our level's gone up, right? It was one thing being like a junior in 2017, 18 when Klopp first came in. 2015, 16, but now, you know, like Bacic, Morton are going to have to be a different level unless somehow we kind of fade away to be able to make it into this team. So, good conversation. We should probably wrap it up, right? We're running another long episode.
You say like it's a bad thing. We've
No. Usually we end on like some hilarious note, and this was very reflective. So,
well, if you want your hilarious note, I'm so spent from this afterwards that I'm gonna go sprawl on my floor like Naby Keita at the 90th minute yesterday.
Or Harvey Elliott, right? That was very interesting. Like how many players had to lie down after that game. Yes, that's the kind of effort we need. Let's take
love to see it.
Let's take that into Saturday. Okay, we'll be back next week after the Reds hopefully have battered Chelsea, and Harry Potter, or Graham Potter, as other people know him, has not been able to work any magic whatsoever. Thank you so much, Justin. Thanks, Daz. This has been awesome. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with a friend. Follow us at First State Kopites on Twitter. We only tweet and retweet from sources we think are credible. Finally, music is courtesy of Hypnotic. They're a Welsh electro-pop band, and you can find them at https://hyperfollow.com/hypnotic. Hypnotic is HYPENOTIC. Thanks so much to them.